So this is the fifth session of this group, and it's on emerging challenges in the Indo-Pacific region, where we have Lieutenant General retired Harinder Singh, who is former GOC of Indian Army. He'll be speaking on importance of land factor in the Indo-Pacific. Then we have Kashif Anwar, who is an independent researcher from India, and he will be talking about China's outreach and India's role in the global chip industry in the Indo-Pacific region. Third, we have Dr. Shambhavi Thite, who is senior doctoral fellow at JawaharlalNehru University, India, and she'll be talking on reassessing Central Asia's role in the Indo-Pacific strategies framework, Indo-Pacific security framework. And there's another joint paper by Dr. Sanghamitra Kalita and Dr. Devi Roy, who are faculty at different universities in India, and they'll be talking about India-Japan strategic cooperation in the Indo-Pacific. Then we have Dr. Sania Makna, who is assistant professor at Manav Rachna International Institute of Research and Studies in India, and she'll be talking on geopolitics of Quad and beyond, assessing India's regional partnership in the Indo-Pacific. Then we have Dr. Ghulam Ali, who is Deputy Director of Hong Kong Research Center of Asian Studies, Hong Kong. We'll be talking about Saudi Arabia's deepening engagement in Asia Pacific. And then lastly, we have Vijay Kumar Jayshwal, who is assistant professor at Tribhuvan University in Nepal. He'll be talking on deconstructing the people's narrative on major issues in the Indo-Pacific strategy. So let me first invite Lieutenant General Harinder Singh first. Sir, over to you. And you have around 10 minutes. Sir, please unmute yourself.
Good evening, everyone. I hope I'm audible.
Yes, sir, you're audible.
Okay. It's my pleasure to be on this panel on this topic of emerging challenges in the Indo-Pacific. At the beginning, when I received this invite from Pramod, whom I'm talking today after about 14 or 15 years, last when we had met here at IDSA Delhi, I did indicate to him that I have no expertise on Indo-Pacific. And therefore, allow me to choose a topic which is to my liking, that is trying to profile the importance of the land factor in the Indo-Pacific. Before I come to discussing or spelling out a short argument on this, let us look at the several notions of the Indo-Pacific. While there are a large number of them in place, let me just look at two of these to see as to why the land factor becomes important for all of us. As we look at the Indo-Pacific, we all see that as an emerging area of geostrategic competition. In that we say, we all say that it is characterized by the rise of China, which in a way in the Pacific is questioning a reigning power, that is the United States. While in the Indian Ocean region, it is making inroads over these last few years and decades. In a way, one can also say that there is a raging rivalry between US and China in the Pacific. And there is a kind of a budding rivalry that we can see emerging between India and China in the Indian Ocean region. So consequently, what is happening is that we are seeing that a large number of alignments are falling in place, whether these are bilateral, trilateral, or multilateral. And the ones which have now gained quite a bit of prominence is like the Quad or the AUKUS. In a way, is trying to bring in place a kind of a strategic collaboration with a view to build capacity, a certain amount of interoperability. And some Western experts also say that, can be a certain amount of interchangeability also of roles. And look at building a larger security resilience in the Indo-Pacific. So when we look at this particular notion here, what we see is that the Indo-Pacific is treated as one big geostrategic space, which is expansive. In a way, it is by 8,000 by 8,000 kilometers, a very large number of countries. close to about 3 dozen countries, some 14 to 15 time zones, and a very large number of large militaries are there, and also 5 nuclear weapon states also there in this region. So this notion basically professes that the entire region, the entire space, the whole of Indo-Pacific is one geostrategic space. The other competing notion is that the Indo-Pacific are in fact 2 contiguous oceans. They are completely distinct and different in a sense that they demonstrate very different pathologies in terms of different maritime geographies, in terms of different maritime histories of war and conflict, in terms of different maritime security contexts and agenda on the table. If you were to look at the Pacific in this particular case, we all see that it's a very congested and a contested geography, that it has a long history of wars and conflicts. It has a history of claims and counterclaims. And there is a constant game of chicken at play at the sea, to the extent of drawing lines on the sea and all that, what we talk of. When we look at the Indian Ocean region, it has largely got open geographies, in a sense that there have been no conflicts or contests in place, other than the routine maritime issues that you have there. And in fact, over the last decades, most of the countries in that region have been internally oriented in terms of, looking after their own geographies, possibly dealing with the issues of decolonization over these years. So what I mean to say is that in the second context, these 2 different oceans look at themselves in different ways. The Pacific carries, in that sense, in terms of a strategic outlook, a more maritime outlook and less continental. But when we look at the Indian Ocean, it is, I would say, more Pacific in that sense. It carries a larger continental context and a relatively less maritime outlook. Now, when we look at these 2 different notions, and of course, there are several other notions that are in place, what I want to bring out is that these 2 notions are largely driven by the land factor. When I say land factor, what I mean by that is the landforms as how they come up, as how they exist, either in the Indian Ocean or in the Pacific Ocean. Now, when we talk about landform, we are essentially talking about countries, the shape and size that they take. So you have countries which are peninsular, you have countries which have a deltaic outlook, you have countries which are landlocked, you have countries which have a kind of a coastal outlook. We have islands, large islands, small islands, and island territories, island chains, and all that put together. So if you were to look at the landform in both the oceans, what we find is that there is a subcontinental context and there is a non-subcontinental context. When we look at the subcontinental, whether we look at the subcontinental context or at the non-subcontinental context, which is largely the island and the island territories, we must remember that the land factor tends to bring in a security orientation which is 360 degrees. In a sense, when we talk about the subcontinental context, it is about land borders, it's about internal security and then maritime security. When we talk about island territories, it is about the maritime approaches to those island territories. Next is the coastal defense of those island territories. And then obviously the internal security of the country per se. So what I mean to say is that the countries where the landform is largely subcontinental have a way of looking at looking at national security priorities, and the countries which are maritime have a different way of looking at the security priorities. So therefore, the land factor is extremely important. Let us take the case of India. In the case of India, we have a large number of land neighbors. We have large land borders. Some of them are even contested or they are active fronts. We have an internal security situation in some of the states, and we also have a maritime context. So therefore, in our context, as a land lover, my outlook would be that look, you have to basically figure out whether you want a stronger continental outlook or a land outlook or a stronger maritime outlook. In a way, can you afford to be weak on the Himalayas and be strong at the sea, or strong on Himalayas and weak at the sea? So therefore, this entire issue of contested borders, active fronts, festering militancies, and everything else put together gives a continental orientation to a country like India. Well, there can be several other examples like this. So without getting into that, what I want to bring out is that it is for this reason that when we look at the bulk total of the land armies in the whole of Indo-Pacific, of all the militaries put together, approximately 60% of the standing force is basically land militaries or land armies. In a way, in the case of India, about 85% of our armed forces is the land component. When you look at Indonesia, about I think 75% of their total uniformed force is a land component. When you look at Philippines, I think it's about 70%. When you look at Japan, it is about 60%. So what I'm trying to say is that despite the fact that some of these countries have a very high maritime orientation, look at the component of the land armies that they have. They have fairly large land armies vis-a-vis the air forces and the navies. And there's a reason to that. And the reason to that is that people live on land, that the governments act from land, and that wars or conflicts basically range at land. So the land component has got a very important role to play. Not only that, the other issue is that the land component carries some of the foundational capacities of any armed force. They are organized on scope and scale, which is different than the Air Force and the navies. Their ability to undertake large-scale operations is at a different scale. Their ability to consolidate gains is at a different scale. So what I mean to say is that in this entire business of maritime security, there has to be an able balance, a sound balance between components of the force. To say that the maritime dimension is largely just an air and a naval dimension is, to my mind, would not be a good argument. That there has to be a joint component which has to be at play. And that is one reason, as I mentioned earlier, that there are a large number of countries which carry this subcontinental outlook, or for them land borders are extremely important. For them, how they work from the continent down to the maritime space is the way that their maritime security is rooted in continental security. So this is extremely important. So what I was trying to say is that when we look at maritime security, we have to look at the land forms first, at the land factor first, in terms of the standing land armies, what foundational capacities that they have, how possibly they can shape the environment at sea, how can they counter aggression to island territories, are they in a position to undertake large scale operations, can they be helpful to the air and the maritime components in terms of consolidating gains at sea. So this is a purely military perspective, in that sense, what I'm trying to put across to you. So when we look at casting the maritime security agenda, my point is that there is a very important requirement to balance the requirements at sea and at land. Now today, when we are talking about Indo-Pacific, if we try to supplant the context of the Pacific into the Indian Ocean region, my argument is that it should not lead to the overpolarization of the sea. In a sense, that the contest and contestation that is there in the Pacific is not relevant to the Indian Ocean region at this point of time. So therefore, in that context, the maritime dimension weighs in terms of priorities a little lesser. So this helps us to basically make our maritime choices. Now, the maritime choices are all about, protecting your near seas or your far seas, securing the channels or the choke points, strengthening your island territories or strengthening your maritime sovereignty and security. So, in the overall context, what I would say is that while for the Pacific Ocean, there is a kind of an oceanic identity that has evolved, that is of competition and contestation. I would say that in the Indian Ocean, that oceanic identity is still evolving. If that oceanic identity is still evolving, then we have to see as to how do we go about tailoring the maritime dimensions of this particular environment. Till such time we do not build coherent maritime context. It is difficult. It will always be difficult for us. It will always be difficult for countries which are with a continental context or a subcontinental context to break away from these contexts and operate in the maritime domain. Now, so that was my basic argument, that land plays a very important role in the shaping of the maritime context, in the shaping of the maritime security agenda, in terms of balancing the requirements at sea and land, as I said earlier, in terms of as to how does a country decide as to what kind of a money is to be put into men, machines, and materials that make the militaries. Okay, has it to be for the land component or for the air component or for the maritime components? In a sense, of course, the broad spectrum of operations will have to be joined at sea as well, and therefore the right proportions have to be worked out in terms of constituting military forces on the ground. Now, having made that short argument, and since we're talking about emerging challenges at sea, I just want to say that when we look at the maritime dimension, it is extremely expansive in terms of extending right from piracy down to blue crimes. So therefore, if you were to really kind of categorize these big challenges that we have, I can put them at two levels. One, of course, are the structural challenges in terms of there are far too many actors at play at sea. So therefore, how do we break these silos? How do we de-silo these different actors on ground at sea and put them together? I think this is a big structural challenge that we have at sea. The other is a functional challenge on which I have a little understanding. But my point is that as an outsider, you always see repeated breakdown of the maritime rules of sea. Now, if they continue to be like this, so therefore, how do you bring order at sea is a structural challenge for us. So in a way, it is about how does a state articulates its policy in terms of controlling various actors at sea, and how do you look at the different routes of the sea? At a functional level, I think it is more of a chain of control issue. It's about information sharing. Is there a requirement to work beyond information sharing in terms of information fusion and all that? What is the outlook towards securing of island territories or securing of coastlines? What are the different ways of securing commerce? How do you secure infrastructure? But purely putting it from, if I were to bring it down to just about 3 or 4 big challenges that we would see at sea in times to come, I think first would be cybersecurity at sea. As the dependency on the sea increases over time, you have more traffic and therefore more vulnerability at sea. Your navigation systems and everything put together will become extremely important. Second is how do we take care of the critical infrastructure that is day by day going at sea? And the third, my sense is that as the climatic conditions get bad over time, the weather conditions get difficult. So management of traffic at sea and all that becomes extremely difficult. So the broader point, as I said earlier, was to see that when we look at Indo-Pacific, what could be a coherent maritime context? Is it one, or is it split into two different oceans? Two, that how much does the landform or the land factor influence the behavior of the states within this maritime space? Three, that from a military perspective, what kind of jointmanship is required at sea? That simply calling it as an air and a maritime dimension might not be enough. That there is a requirement to, kind of take into account the land components also in the overall in kind of figuring out the security priorities of the state. So now also what is important is that the countries that carry a very high maritime aspiration, how do they break away from the continental context is also a question. How would that happen? Is it doable or it is not doable in the time frames that we look at? Or is that a culture that would evolve over time and therefore you present that kind of things? So that's all I have. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. Now I'd like to invite Dr. Shantesh Kumar Singh to take over. Dr. Shantesh Kumar Singh is professor at School of International Studies, JawaharlalNehru University. Sir, please take over the session.
Thank you, Dr. Prasad. I'm audible?
Yes, sir, you are audible and visible.
Okay, thank you. So, I think the first presentation has already been conducted. Lieutenant General Harinder Singh has deliberated his paper on importance of land factor in the Indo-Pacific, and which is very relevant to understand why I'm telling. So, because whatever practices we are doing for what? To secure our country, right? To work for national security, right? So in that way, this land factor is very important in Indo-Pacific region. All the countries are struggling to secure their border by keeping their forces engaged in Indo-Pacific region. So that way we have heard a lot from Harinder Singh ji. And with this, I am moving next paper presentation to Kashif Anwar, right? Who is independent researcher, also from India, and his topic is China's outreach and India's role in global chips industry in the Indo-Pacific region. Another important paper I'm expecting in this session. Kashif.
Good evening, everyone. Today, I will be presenting my paper titled China Outreach and India's Role in Global Chip Industry in the Indo-Pacific region. As my paper delves into India's semiconductor policy and cooperation agreement India has signed with other nations regard to semiconductor, which has positioned India as a potential alternative to China in the global semiconductor supply chain. As we can see, at present, the global landscape is at critical juncture as escalating great power competition between the US and China in the Indo-Pacific region has significantly impacted the global trade and tech industry. This situation has prompted nations worldwide to pursue self-reliance in certain sectors and adopt hedging strategies to address national security concerns. The landscape of global geopolitics, diplomacy, geoeconomics, and the geotech policies have undergone a significant change in recent years. Increasing importance of semiconductor in the economy, advanced technology, outer space, weapons, and competition for dominance in the semiconductor industry have initiated a tech race between the US and China. With China progressing towards self-reliance and developing chips for advanced technologies such as artificial intelligence, robotics, quantum computing, cybersecurity, and military advanced radar, communication, navigation, and weaponry systems. These advancements have enabled China to compete with Western nations in the tech domain and have also raised concern for India, considering the situation on the Indo-Chinese border. This has prompted India and West to pursue the China Plus One decoupling strategy, as we know, which focuses on tech cooperation with chip industry as one of main priorities. As decoupling strategy has positioned India in a pivotal role as viewed by the West, this has resulted in a complex Indo-Chinese tech competition. Given China's dominance in the global tech industry, as we know, and recent geopolitical tension with its neighboring nations and West, India's rise and tech policies presented India as an alternative to China to the world in becoming a new tech hub. On the other hand, In the case of China, China tech policy and substantial investment in the tech industry in recent years have enabled it to dominate the EV industry and control and regulate the global supply of three critical rare earth materials, as we recently heard, like gallium, germanium, and antimony. Supply will be curtailed further, and the refinement process. Further, the objective of China's 2021 five-year plan has emphasized a range of technologies, including quantum computing, new generation AI, and integrated chips. As such initiatives were followed by strategic investment to achieve self-reliance in the chip industry, from mining to research development to chip export, aiming to ensure tech dominance over the US in the coming years. However, as the world is witnessing a significant shift as major tech companies are diversifying their manufacturing bases and are slowly moving away from China, on the other hand, such an event has also pushed India as an attractive alternative for such multinational companies. Now let's see what is India's role and its emergence as a chip power in the coming years. As India is projected to become the third largest economy by 2030 and is poised to challenge China as a key tech hub in Asia and globally, the evolving geopolitics in the Indo-Pacific region and strategies such as the China Plus One have provided India a window of opportunity with a favorable position in the global semiconductor industry. China's growing global dominance in the chip industry is evident as it possesses 40% of the world reserve of rare earth materials and currently consumes 55% of world semiconductors. Thus, rendering disengagement from China regarding chips by other nations is complex, and West is aware of such situations, including India. While tax restrictions imposed by Western nations on China have affected its semiconductor manufacturing capacity for now, India's emergence in the chip industry supply chain as a viable alternative have raised some concern in China and gave West an opportunity to counter China. India's rise as an alternative to China in the tech industry allows nations to diversify and shift away from China, which include increasing strategic investment and promoting technological cooperation and collaboration with India, which will further impact China's position as a tech powerhouse of Asia. This development is being closely observed worldwide, and India's emergence as an alternative to China as a tech power, coupled with India strengthening its position in the service sector, is an opportunity, something India doesn't want to miss in the coming years. India growing ties with the West and the promotion of ease of doing business and domestic manufacturing capacity, including India's semiconductor missions, have enabled foreign companies like Apple, Micron, Keynes, and others to consider India as a viable option. Such developments are being watched by China as it promotes India as a global manufacturer of high-tech electronics and chips, supported by growth of domestic startup culture. However, the path for India is not without challenges, like a gap in India's R&D capacity to innovate and develop an advanced chip is driven by a shortage of 250,000 to 3 lakh skilled professional laborers across, as such gap will continue till 2027. On the other hand, as India is on the road to become the largest market for semiconductors, its supply has become a vital component for India tech policy to ensure a secure digital economy, particularly when semiconductor supply chain continue to be under pressure in 2024, and hopefully it will continue in 2025 next year due to ongoing geopolitical tension worldwide. To address the situation and secure national interest, India's mission has been to implement a long-term comprehensive chip manufacturing policy. To achieve such a vision, Semiconductor Mission posits that there is a need for a well-established infrastructure, promotion of indigenous intellectual property generation, and collaboration with like-minded countries to establish a trusted source of supply chain. In this regard, India has signed numerous strategic tech partnerships, as you can say, agreement, cooperation, and MOU with the US, Japan, Taiwan, South Korea, Singapore, Netherlands, and the EU has enabled and prompted, or can say, Indian companies such as Tata Electronics to collaborate with the Taiwan-based TSMC to establish a chip fabrication facility in Gujarat. India's strategic tech partnerships with many nations have enhanced its domestic chip industry, fostering a substantial talent pool, promoting digital economy, facilitating investment, and augmenting its R&D capacity in semiconductor sector. Such partnership also supports India initiatives like Make in India, Startup India Initiative, Atal Innovation Mission, and Startup India Scheme and Innovation Promotion. On the other hand, such technological cooperation with other countries in conjunction with Indian government policy, enabled India to enhance its R&D capability and technological manufacturing capacity. Further, such development will introduce a new insight and cutting-edge technology to the global tech environment, elevating India's status as an emerging chip manufacturing hub and power. Furthermore, India's ascent in the semiconductor industry and its increasing significance in the global supply chain have become a prominent feature of global tech sphere, reinforcing China Plus One strategy and positioning India at the center of tech advancement in the Indo-Pacific region. In this context, despite China's substantial investment in its domestic chip industry to produce advanced chips and circumvent the West sanctions, including technological restriction and export control on the sale of advanced chips to China, the West's moves so far have impacted or slowed down China's Made in China 2025 initiative goal of achieving self-sufficiency in the semiconductor industry. As China faces limited access to cutting-edge technology such as lithography machines, which are primarily manufactured by the ASML in the Netherlands and is crucial for ensuring China's tech independence. Conversely, the improvement in relation between India and West is perceived as a mutually beneficial, allowing Western nations to counter China and restrict its technological advancement while providing India with an access to advanced technology. As strategic technological cooperation allow India to secure its semiconductor demands and requirements and necessities, which has enhanced its position in the global semiconductor industry. Coming to the conclusion, the global tech industry has experienced a rapid transformation, as we have seen in the last 10 years, due to the emergence of new technology resulting from advanced semiconductor chips. Consequently, access to and control over such semiconductor has become crucial for many nations, including India, China, Japan, South Korea, EU, and the US. In this context, emergence of India as an alternative to China as a manufacturing and supply of chips is regarded with optimism by many nations and global tech companies. As the West and tech companies anticipate joint venture and strategic partnership with India to ensure mutually beneficial tech collaboration, it has transformed India's role and position significantly at a time when US-China tech competition has become intense and will be becoming more intense under Trump's administration. However, India should continue its trajectory towards becoming a key tech hub and player in the chip industry's supply chain, positioning itself as a viable alternative for the global market in the coming years. Thank you.
Thank you, Kashif. Thank you for making a very nice presentation on a very relevant topic. And this is what we are listening nowadays across the globe. The importance of chips are, growing, fast, and that is not demanded in particular sector. That is being demanded by all sectors. Now we have started incorporating the role of basically AI and cyber security kind of issues also coming along with other issues. So with that, keeping that that fact in mind, we may say this is one of the best paper you have written. But at the same time, I would like to hear back from the participants, audiences in the last, because you'll get more questions. This is very relevant how India is going to cooperate with Taiwan, because that is one of the closest ally of India, right? If we are going to have more and more companies, chips companies, I'm talking about in that reference to basically, definitely we are going to have differences with those partners who are very much known for their productivity of chips. So definitely we'll have questions in the last. And with this, I think we should move to next participant and paper presenter, Dr. Shambhavi Thite. Shambhavi, are you there?
Hello, sir. Hi. Sorry, due to technical error, my camera is not
That's
working,
absolutely
but
fine.
I would like to share my screen for the presentation.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, I would like to thanks Pramod ji and nice for inviting me to this very important discussion, and I'm enjoying thoroughly to participate this very important discussion debate. Pramod ji, thank you so much. Yeah, Shambhavi, it's quite visible. Your
Uh,
PPT is quite visible. Yeah.
Yeah. Hello, I'm Shambhavi Thite, Doctoral Fellow at School of International Studies in Asian Studies in JawaharlalNehru University, New Delhi. Topic of my presentation is reassessing Central Asia's role in the Indo-Pacific security framework. So, to begin with, Central Asia is now receiving increased scrutiny for its potential contribution to the security architecture in Indo-Pacific. This shift in perspective is driven by the region's strategic geographical position, abundant energy resources, and enhanced connectivity with the South and Southeast Asia. To comprehend the changing role of Central Asia, it is essential to examine its historical context, economic interconnections, and security dilemmas, the strategies employed by both regional and global powers. So, my paper is focused on all these aspects and all these issues. To begin with, historical context and geostrategic significance. We all know the Belt Road Initiative led by China has reinforced Central Asia's status as a vital overland corridor. The establishment of new transportation routes and pipelines has created a connection between China, Europe, and South Asia. This infrastructure offers alternative to sea routes, thereby reducing the risk linked to critical Indo-Pacific choke points such as Strait of Malacca, and consequently, Central Asia's geostrategic significance has shifted from being marginal in Indo-Pacific discussion to becoming essential for diversing strategic axis. Uh, Regarding economic connectivity and New Silk Road, Kazakhstan ranks among the top uranium producer worldwide. So, while Turkmenistan possesses some of the largest natural gas reserves, establishing both nations as a key contributors to the global energy supply chain. Significant infrastructure projects such as Central Asia China gas pipeline and the Turkmenistan Afghanistan Pakistan India, which is Tapi pipeline, are essential for connecting Central Asia's energy assets to South and East Asia, thereby further embedding the region within Indo Pacific energy networks. The INSTC, which is India's vision for Central Asia, facilitates connection between India, Central Asia, and Europe, circumventing traditional obstacles such as Pakistan, which enhances India's market access while diminishing its dependence on conventional maritime routes. This corridor works in tandem with China's Belt Road Initiative, establishing both competitive and complementary pathways that link Central Asia to Indo Pacific economies. This advancement underscores the strategic importance of Central Asia, transforming it into a pivotal land based axis for the Indo Pacific, essential for energy diversification and economic stability. Um then, regarding the security challenges and regional stability, this region is characterized by various transnational threats such as terrorism, drug trafficking, and religious extremism. The 2021 withdrawal of US forces from Afghanistan has heightened the fears regarding the potential for Taliban to influence to extend into Central Asia, and now ISKP is coming with the same vision, so which could lead to instability in adjacent regions of South and Southeast Asia. The combination of porous borders and inadequate governance in certain Central Asian countries renders them particularly, vulnerable to these threats. Uh, then China's expanding military footprints in Central Asia, framed as a counterterrorism collaboration, has a significant repercussion for the balance of power in Indo-Pacific. So these are the current security and regional challenges, which is hampering the Central Asia's stability. Now, what is the role of regional and global power in this entire issue? India has committed resources to various regional infrastructure projects, including rail and road system, to bolster connectivity and supply chains, and therefore solidifying its strategic presence within the borders of Indo-Pacific context. United States has utilized is C5, which is Central Asia 5+1 framework, as for dialogue and collaboration with Central Asian countries. This initiative addresses the governance, economic development, and regional security issues, including terrorism and transnational crime, fostering democratic governance and transparent economic practices, which resonates with Central Asian nations that are exploring alternatives to the dominance of China and Russia. By integrating these efforts within its broader Indo-Pacific strategy, the US underscores the interconnectedness of Central Asia with maritime and continental security consideration, further solidifying its importance within Indo-Pacific framework. Then the complexities of multipolarity, as many major power like Russia, China, US, and now India is trying to be active in this region. Russia and China has always been active due to geographical proximity, but now India and US is also trying due to the security and connectivity reasons. The Central Asian region is significantly shaped by the Russian influence, particularly through entities such as Collective Security Treaty Organization, which is CSTO, as well as by Chinese engagement via the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, which is we known as SCO. Although these affiliations contribute to regional stability, they simultaneously constrain the engagement of other Indo-Pacific powers, which is, I guess, one of the major challenges we have to deal with in upcoming period. The divergent priorities among these regional stakeholders can result in a disjointed strategy. For example, while India and Japan aim to bolster connectivity and counterbalance China's rise, Russia remains primarily concerned with the preserving its established sphere of influence in Central Asia. This RA and this complexities within the within the big powers and competing interest underscores the necessity for a cohesive strategy to effectively incorporate Central Asia into the broader Indo-Pacific security framework. If we talk about comprehensive perspective on integration and the way forward for this entire issue, for Central Asia to assume a significant position within Indo-Pacific security framework, it is essential to develop unified strategy that takes economic, security, and governance issues. There should be one organization which will deal with all these issues, because currently, even if we look at the Indo-Pacific framework, we are somewhere lacking when it comes to organizational support. Many small regional organizations are playing huge part, but there is a no single organization which could take a lead and focus on this entire framework. So, multilateral entities such as Shanghai Cooperation Organization, the Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank, which is AIIB, and the International North-South Transport Corridor, which is INSTC, can be utilized to enhance stability and connectivity in Central Asia. Additionally, fortifying regional institutions in Central Asia and integrating them into Indo-Pacific discussion can help to unlock the region's full potential. In conclusion, I want to say that reevaluating Central Asia's contribution to Indo-Pacific security framework underscores its growing significance as a land-based counterpart to maritime strategies. It is strategic geographical position, abundant energy resources, and developing connectivity render it a crucial area for fostering broader stability. Addressing the obviously intricacies of multipolarity, transnational threats, and divergent interest will necessitate the sophisticated policies and cooperative initiatives from both Indo-Pacific and Central Asian nations. Uh, the integration of Central Asia into the Indo Pacific framework could serve as a critical element in establishing a balanced and secure regional order. So that's all. Thank you for giving me opportunity to present my paper. Uh, and I am Shambhavi Thite, doctoral fellow at Jawaharlal Nehru University. Thank you
Okay,
so much.
okay, Shambhavi, thank you for making very nice presentation. And really, it's the important topic because at present the entire conflict is happening because of natural resources. The country, those regions are rich in terms, are having natural resources are basically getting attraction of basically major powers and the powers who are aspiring to become global powers. Basically, in that way, this particular region is having another kind of conflict of different
Yes.
actors like China, Russia, US, India.
Yes.
All these actors are very much there in Central Asian region. So that way, this particular region, is experiencing a lot of challenges. How to deal with such different aligning forces in that particular region. Actually, that is different
Right.
point coming out
Right.
in that particular region. With this, I'm going to invite the next paper presenter, Dr. Sanghamitra Kalita and Dr. Devi Roy.
Evening, sir. So can you hear me?
Yeah, you're audible.
I don't know, some problem has come up. The camera, like I'm not able to open the camera. You have to learn more about it. I am a little bit technologically
so that's why India is working for chips. We have to develop
no, I don't know why. Like you have to learn more. I'm not able to open it. So is it okay, sir? Like if I
it's all right. If that is not opening, we don't have any way out of this crisis. Actually, if to go with this, yeah.
Yes. Thank you, sir. So, like, are you able to see the slide? Is it visible?
Yeah.
Yes. Sorry.
Just give me 1 second. I'm not able to open it. Okay. So, first of all, like, I want to thank Nice Nepal for giving us the opportunity and platform. It's a great experience listening to so many speakers across the world. I am Dr. Sanghamitra Kalita, working as a faculty in University of Mysore, Karnataka. So this is the joint paper presentation. So I will be presenting the first half, and the second half, starting from economic cooperation, will be dealt by Devi Roy. She is also a JNUite, same as me. We have both done our PhD from Center for US, Latin America, and Canadian Division. So thank you so much for giving us the opportunity. The topic of our presentation is India-Japan strategic cooperation in the Indo-Pacific. So India-Japan partnership holds an important position, as we all know, because this paper was already presented in the nautical slot. A free, open, and inclusive Indo-Pacific is at the core of our special strategic and global partnership. This has been reiterated by India and Japan joint statement that outlines their vision 2025. This is very important, vision 2025, which emphasizes on special strategic and global partnership while working together for peace and prosperity in the Indo-Pacific region. As we all know, Indo-Pacific is a highly contested region. This statement ensured a joint commitment towards devising a long-term action plan concentrating on defense. Yes, I will be speaking on defense. Economy portion will be like Devi Roy will speak, humanitarian assistance, and most importantly, investing in enhancing the infrastructural connectivity of the region, which is the need of the hour. So next Japan in the Indo-Pacific. Over the last decade, we have witnessed a resurgent Japan playing a major role in the geopolitics of Asia and in the Indo-Pacific. An unrestricted Indo-Pacific is one of the most salient beliefs of Japan's foreign policy. Japan remains committed to a regional order, which is, of course, rule-based, working on transparency, openness, and laws for trade, investment, quality infrastructure, and most importantly, prevention against external coercion. Japan encourages freedom of navigation, which does not correspond to economic necessity but also has security implications. This has been the grand strategy under the Abe-san administration to revive its national strength and confidence, enabling Japan to seek a greater regional economic role in the global world order. Promoting infrastructure growth and connectivity would further enable it to tackle challenges of diplomacy and security in the region. The above objectives have evolved into projects such as Asia-Africa Growth Corridor, initiating greater connectivity between the two continents of Asia and Africa. Japan has sought to further its influence through economic investment, engaging its infrastructure and connectivity projects, and lobbying for inclusion of states like India, New Zealand, and Australia in the East Asia Summit. Driven by challenges posed by China, of course, China is an important challenger for both the countries, for both India and Japan, particularly its growing influence in South China Sea and the perceived threat to Japan's investment and infrastructure project in ASEAN nations. Through the BRI initiative, Japan under former Prime Minister Shinzo Abe reinforced the quadrilateral security dialogue by resuming talks in 2017 to uphold rule-based order in the Indo-Pacific and came up with the concept of FOIP, that is Free and Open Indo-Pacific. Abe's FOIP strategy was rooted in his vision of the arc of freedom and prosperity in the year 2006 and confluence of the two seas in the year 2007. Abe's policy rested on three key pillars, that is, the advocacy and establishment of rule of law, ensuring freedom of navigation, and promoting free trade, pursuit of economic prosperity, including efforts to enhance connectivity, and a commitment to peace, stability through active engagement in the region in collaboration with partner countries. Next, like India in the Indo-Pacific. The region of Indo-Pacific also holds prominence for India's commitments towards a democratic and rule-based order with open and free seas, space and airways. And this was reiterated in the Shangri-La dialogue by Prime Minister Narendra Modi. It further connects the region through the vision of freedom of navigation, unimpeded commerce, and peaceful settlement of disputes in accordance with international law, a fundamental aspect to its diplomacy. Its perspective towards the region boasts about its inclusiveness and connectivity. India's major policy of Act East remains prime for its connectivity initiatives, while its infrastructural projects of Kaladan Transport Project, Sagarmala, Bharatmala are enabling India to position itself as a major connectivity promoter in its neighborhood. Now, the paper is premised on three aspects, that is military cooperation between India and Japan, economic cooperation, and maritime security. So India, Japan, I will just make it a little bit shorter because of paucity of time. India-Japan military cooperation. India-Japan defense cooperation has emerged as one of the central pillars of its relationship over the years. And one of the foremost aspect of this is India-Japan 2+2 dialogue, which involves both foreign and defense ministerial meeting, which was initiated in the year 2019. And this is an important step forward in this direction towards cooperation in the military, aspect. The ministers in the third 2+2 meeting welcomed the possibilities to further enhance the bilateral security and defense cooperation, followed the National Security Strategy of Japan issued in the year 2022, and recognized such cooperation as an important pillar of India-Japan special strategic and global partnership. Now, over the years, the Chinese military buildup, the kind of defense spending we have witnessed by China around this region has been a major concern for both the countries. India-Japan bilateral military exercises across Asia has been instrumental in expanding acceptance as key regional strategic actors by other powers, within South Asia, Southeast Asia, East Asia, and Indian Ocean region and the Persian Gulf. Now, joint military exercises are extremely important, and it reflects regional balance of power and politics and power projection in the region. Now I have given in detail about the different military exercises. Take for example Zymex, Japan India maritime exercises over the years and how they are extremely pivotal in this direction. The first ever joint naval drill in the Indian Ocean between the Quad countries took place in the year 2020 when Japan, India, and United States took part in Malabar naval exercises. Extremely important. And going to the next slide. Next slide is also the continuation of different exercises. I'm going to the other slide. The third cybersecurity dialogue conference took place in the year June 2021 between India and Japan. Topics of discussion included capacity building programs, collaboration in multilateral forums, and cybersecurity problems in the post-COVID age. Now, the Malabar naval drill, which took place in the year 2021 with participants from the US, India, is also an important step in this direction. I will move a little bit faster. Exercise Dharma Guardian is an important annual exercise between two countries. Aim of this exercise is to foster military cooperation and enhance combined capabilities to execute joint cooperation in semi-urban environment under Chapter 7 of United Nations Charter. Then we have the 5th edition of Dharma Guardian. Then we have Veer Guardian 2023. Now, this is extremely important in the sense that we are also conducting not only naval exercises, but also air force, like drilling between the two countries, between the Air Force of Japan and India, which happened in the year 2023. Then over the years, all these exercises have shown the urgency to speed up military cooperation between the two nations. And another aspect of our defense cooperation is intelligence sharing, which holds a key to address Chinese expansionism in the region. So this is a continuation of different exercises that we have witnessed. So I am giving over to Devi, who will be speaking about the economic cooperation, about infrastructure and connectivity, and also the maritime aspect. Over to you, Devi. Thank you so much. Thank you for giving us the opportunity.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Kalita. So she's already mentioned that the India and Japan share special strategic and global partnership because the two countries have a long history rooted in spiritual affinity and strong cultural and civilization ties. So I am discussing about the India-Japan economic cooperation and maritime security. So, India-Japan economic cooperation, there is an infrastructure and connectivity projects. So, the two nations have worked together on well-known infrastructure projects such as the Mumbai-Ahmedabad high-speed rail, that was bullet train project, and the Delhi-Mumbai industrial corridor. In recent years, a number of connectivity and infrastructural initiatives have started between Japan and India. So, I'm telling a few of them because of shortage of time. So, there is the dedicated freight corridor, that is the DFC, is a railway project that would build two high-speed, high-capacity freight corridors, the Dadri to Jawaharlal-Nehru Port Western Corridor and the Downtown to Ludhiana Eastern Corridor. So Japan has contributed money and knowledge to help build the Western Corridor. The North, there is a Act East policy. We already know that the Northeast Road Network Connectivity Improvement Project is a road development initiative aimed at enhancing the northeastern Indian state accessibility and connectiveness. So Japan has contributed grants and loans for the building and upkeep of the project's roads and bridges. So, in pursuit of Japan's free and open Indo-Pacific strategy, the late Prime Minister Abe initiated the Partnership for Quality Infrastructure in May 2015 in collaboration with the Asian Development Bank. Next slide. A crucial element, if you look at the Japan-Indian Vision 2025, involves the development of the India's Northeast region, which I already mentioned, that serving as a conversion point for the India's Act East policy and Japan's FOIP policy. And India and Japan are also collaborating in countries such as the Myanmar and Sri Lanka. Sri Lanka, India, and Japan in May 2019 came up with a plan to develop and operate the East Container Terminal, that is ECT, of Colombo Port under the Trilateral Memorandum of Cooperation (MOC). If you look at the in March 2023, Japan's Prime Minister Fumio Kishida, during a visit to New Delhi, building on the foundation laid by the predecessor Shinzo Abe, introduced new initiative for the FOIP. Shida's FOIP plan revolves around four main pillars, that is important principle for peace and rules for prosperity, addressing challenges as an Indo-Pacific way, multi-layered connectivity, and expanding efforts for security and safe use for the sea to the air. Shida also announced Japan's intention to review its ODA guidelines for the next decade with the aim of continuing ongoing ODA initiative to strengthen collaboration on the FOIP with regional partners. So now I move into the another issues, that was the maritime security. So the maritime issues stand as an important issue because it was the truest example of the global common challenges that was emerging at that time. This requires a strong and enduring partnership between India and Japan in ensuring a free, open, and prosperous Indo Pacific region that is inclusive and rules based. As a major maritime powers in the region, both India and Japan are increasingly focusing on changing the complex maritime landscape of the Indo Pacific. The region remains the strategic pivot for energy sources, housing two of the major sea lanes of communication and choke points of the Strait of Hormuz and Malacca. The situation has been worsening with the growing challenges of sea piracy in the region. For battling the same, India and Japan have been developing their maritime security cooperation under the Regional Cooperation Agreement on combating piracy and armed robbery against ships in Asia. Recap that this have been combined of anti-piracy search and rescue exercise and Coast Guard training through a memorandum of cooperation since 2006. So now I concluded that two of the Asia's largest democracy, India and Japan, already we see that have shared values that emphasize openness and transparency, rule of law, freedom of navigation, and cooperation in the Indo-Pacific region. Further, Japan is one of the few countries with which India has an annual summit at the level at the two heads of government. To conclude, we want to underscore that the fact that special strategic and global partnership relation upgraded in 2014 from strategic and global partnership between India and Japan. Two of the major democracy in the Indo-Pacific has been strengthened due to the alignment of their geo-economic and geostrategic interest. From infrastructure development to economic cooperation and defense collaboration, the multifaceted relationship between these two nations underscores their pivotal roles in the Indo-Pacific. So India has witnessed the alignment of its Act East policy, Sagar, under the largest IPOI with Japan's FOIP in recent times. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you so much to Sanghamitra and Devi Roy. You both have presented nicely on India-Japan is strategic cooperation in the Indo-Pacific. You have covered a lot of issues within it, and we have to understand there's a very famous saying of there's a very important fact given by Kautilya, Mandala theory. Enemy is friend, and that is the case of India and Japan. We have celebrated that relationship long way back, and still we are enjoying that relationship in 21st century, because the challenge we are witnessing in the present scenario is China. Both of the countries are experiencing threat from China, and that is the common issue which making us to go closer, actually, to work together actually in that way. And these two countries are working not in economic field only, but also in other aspects of international politics and international relations too, right? So this is one of the best example to conduct research how countries can have relationship with a sustainable approach, and these two countries have proved that by achieving a lot of successful stories, because we got a lot of assistance from uh, Japan, and the entire developmental process of India has been backed by Japan, and in Japan have always been so keen to help India in rising, particularly as a global leader. So in that way, these two countries are celebrating, and definitely Japanese are also getting support from India too, in context of providing market, in context of helping them to counter basically China in that particular region. So with this important note, I would like to thank both our presenters, and definitely to invite the next presenter, Dr. Sania Makna, Assistant Professor, Manav, Rachna, International Institute of Research and Studies, Yeah, Sania.
Very good evening to everybody. Already very nice presentations have taken place. I'm Dr. Sania, an assistant professor. Sir has already given the introduction, I think. I have also done my PhD from JNU itself. And today I am going to present on the topic geopolitics of Quad and beyond, and assessing India's regional partnerships in the Indo-Pacific, whereby I will be covering 4 or 5 themes. First of all, I'll be just giving a brief summary about why significance of the Indo-Pacific. Already, I think most of the people have covered it, but still, I'll be covering it. Then I'll be covering India and the Indo-Pacific, and then India and the Quad's partnership, and then regional aspirations of India beyond Quad, and the challenges which India face in the Indo-Pacific, and then I'll conclude my paper. So, just looking at the significance of the Indo-Pacific, the region is geopolitically and geoeconomically very, very important. It's becoming strategically very important among the major powers of the world. We find that competition in that China's intervention, US intervention, Australia, Japan, and now India is also becoming the part of this belt. Because this region has lots of resources. Apart from that, 60% of the world's population is residing in this region. It consists of 4 continents, that is Asia, Africa, America, Australia, very important continents again. And 2/3 of the world's global economic output comes from this region. And most of the important sea trade routes like Strait of Malacca is there, Suez Canal is there, and we have Silk Route is there, all passes through the Indian Ocean and the Pacific Ocean. So this region becomes strategically very, very important. So towards this region, different countries have different perceptions. For example, US wants to have US has this perception, it actually considered the region as a counter strategy against China, because it wants to counter China against its aggressive expansionist policies in the region. And similarly, India does not see the region as against anyone. So in the recent summit also, which held Indo-Pacific Summit in 2024, India clearly stated that we are not against anyone. We want inclusive, collaborative Indo-Pacific. So India sees the region from Africa to America, whereby India focuses on multi-alignments, bilateral cooperation, and to create or to foster democratic, equal, sovereign, and rules-based order in the Indo-Pacific, where every country can equally participate in the Indo-Pacific. So it's not against anyone. Similarly, different countries have different perceptions about the region, and these perceptions help them to formulate their policies, Indo-Pacific policies, or towards the region. They formulate their foreign policies and help in fulfillment of their strategic interests also. And also it helps in the development of the region as well, because when multilateral engagements and bilateral engagements are happening, so ultimately the region's development is also taking place. Now I'll be focusing on India and the Indo-Pacific. Initially, India was not proactive in the region, and its policy was not inclined towards Indo-Pacific. It was when China's aggressive intentions, or China attacked its borders and also its sea lanes and started making bases and ports surrounding in the countries which are surrounding India. So when China became active in the region, India became active in the region, and it led India to rethink its Indo-Pacific policy. So India started rethinking its Indo-Pacific policy, which was mainly concerning towards South Asia and Indian Ocean. And it was an unexpected opportunity for India when Quad was formed, and Australia, US, and Japan, thought that India can be a significant player to counter China in the Indo-Pacific. So then suddenly India reshifted its Indo-Pacific policy. So major strategic interests of India in the Indo-Pacific are building connectivity, reducing diverge interests in the region, focusing on more collaborations, that is multilateral and bilateral, maritime security, socio-economic development, and also providing human security in the region, and also to promote its look at East policy. relationships with Southeast Asian nations also. So India is not against anyone, and also India wants to balance its geopolitical challenges which are occurring in that region. So India also wants to maintain its relations with the island nations, that is Seychelles, Maldives, Sri Lanka. So in that way also these are some major strategic interests of India in the Indo-Pacific. Now I am going to talk about the India and the Quads partnership. And no doubt, US, Japan, Australia, these countries consider, because Quad is a quadrilateral security dialogue, which is formed of 4 members: India, Australia, Japan, and US. So these 3 countries consider India as a very important player in the Indo-Pacific to counter China. But on the other hand, they also perceive India as a weak link, because India is reluctant to form any firm military alliance, because if you see India's history also, we always focused on NAM policy, that is non-alignment policy, whereby we never wanted to be a part of any military bloc against anyone. So in Quad was actually formed to you can say counter regional challenges, and especially to counter China's aggressive intentions in the region. So India never wanted to be you can say in the firm military bloc, but yes, it wanted to take benefits from the Quad, like engaging in bilateral cooperations, engaging in naval or military exercises, engaging in multilateral cooperations, and also to raise its international status among the major powers. So through Quad, India uses mixed approach while dealing with the Quad. First is situational and issue based. When I'm saying situational and issue based, that means India is using strategic autonomy when it comes to taking decisions regarding balancing of relations with Russia and China. So it does not directly attack or becomes anti-Russia and anti-China. We can see it in the case of Russia-Ukraine wars also, that it is not in favor of the war, but at the same time, India is not, directly countering Russia for that. And also, similarly is the case with China also. India is most you can say sorting out the issues and problems rather than going into conflict. So it doesn't, and it uses neutral approach because it avoids conflicts. It is not against anyone. It rather focuses on more pragmatic approach, more inclusive approach, more collaborative approach, whereby India wants multi-alignment, seeking mutual and beneficial relations with other countries. So now the very important part actually, which I'm going to discuss, is regional aspirations of India beyond Quad. So if you see, India is not limited only to Quad. India wants to have more relationships because it wants to focus on socio-political, economic development of the region as well as of India itself also. And it also wants to create a very strong security network in the region because it sees most of the Indian Ocean trade routes are passing, important trade routes are passing through the Indian Ocean. So it is a great concern. The maritime security becomes a great concern for India. So India's regional aspirations, already it has started bilateral relationships with Japan, with Australia. I think Dr. Sanghamitra and Dr. Devi has already explained about India-Japan partnership, and they have also started military exercises, naval exercises like OS, Index, Malabar. All these practices are going on. Even economic trade relations are building. India's main priority is the ASEAN nations, that is Southeast Asian nations, because of its Act East policy, and also it wants to promote you can say security, very strong security network among the island nations also. And Sagar is one such example that India wants to promote a very inclusive order or democratic sovereign order in the Indo-Pacific, that is security and growth for all. So the opportunities for India to build a regional partnerships are cyber security is there for on this in maritime security is there, regional you can say artificial intelligence is there, and then non-traditional security threats whereby this such terrorism, and also whereby India can have relationships with or regional partnerships with other countries. India can also build strong economic networks, can provide human security. Like you can say, the COVID-19 was such pandemics can occur again, or anything can happen, human disasters, whereby India can also provide the socio-economic, political, and human security. So in the region, so regional partnerships can be built on these opportunities. And now I'm going to talk about the challenges which India face. So India has no doubt many challenges. The biggest challenge is the lack of proper infra, the capacity, and you can say, which we have. Rising China in the Indo-Pacific through its BRI initiative, because it's making a very strong network with the Southeast Asian countries, Central Asian countries, and other countries. So India has to become, you can say, fasten its pace to make good relationships with the Southeast Asian nations, as well as with among other major powers also. And India should also increase its like India lacks in defense, modern defense infrastructure, which again becomes a challenge for India, as China's increasing militarization in the Indo-Pacific is becoming a challenge for India. So India needs to increase its modern defense infra, we can say. We have, but we needs to improve more. Also, we needs to improve our market economy and capacity in the region. And regional competitiveness and conflicts or rivalry also become a hurdle for India. Lack of strong regional security alliances lacking in the Indo-Pacific, for like where India can be a stronghold. So these are, I think, few challenges which India needs to focus on and needs to cover up. So now I conclude my paper by saying that it's a very vital, like geopolitically and geoeconomically, it's a very vital position or landscape for India to have shape its foreign policy. And whereby India can also, India through its multilateral alignments and regional or bilateral partnerships, can you can say develop its self as socio-economic development can be happen. And also in Quad, or also it can become a very significant player after China, or you can say against China, as it can provide cheap market in the region, because Australia, US, and Japan can be expensive markets for Southeast Asian nations and island nations and other countries in, surrounding the Indo-Pacific. So India can be provide cheap market. It's just that India needs to improve its capacity. India needs to build strong infrastructure. Security wise, it can be a best, trade routes can be improved, infra can be improved, and India can also become a very important international figure when it comes to Indo-Pacific, or shaping its policy in the Indo-Pacific among the major regional powers. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Sania. It was really a wonderful presentation, and you have nicely elaborated the role of Quad, basically, because it is getting prominence role in this emerging world order. All the major countries are considering as important multilateral platform. As we all are knowing, 2007 onwards, 2007 to 17, what happened? This particular group was dysfunctional, but later what happened? It has revived, and all the countries has started taking it seriously, and member states of Quad have proactively got engaged in countering basically China through different mechanism by having comprehensive agreements and treaties basically, and that's what happening. That is what taking place in that particular region. But at the same time, we need to understand there's another dimension from Indian perspective. That is not the thing we have to look into. Basically, that we are used to say like China is one of the biggest threat to India, but that is one side of the story. At the same time, nowadays we are listening like deep state, which is sponsoring these kind of concepts, which states are involved in doing deep state kind of mechanisms through which they are trying to influence the governments or to destabilize the government across the globe. So to keep ourselves safe, we have to be careful. We don't need to too much dependent on particular region or country or group. Basically, we have to be smart. We have to be wise in that way while we are taking side basically with a particular country, group of countries basically. And in the case of Quad, this is what happening. We are so much dependent. We are so much hopeful with this Quad. But that is one side of the story. It is good to have good relations with China, because that is what government of India is doing. we are trying to minimize our differences with China. What happened in past at border, basically, that is what we have done, and that is the excellent move actually of government of India. That is one of the surprising, basically, act of government of India. Basically, the West has never imagined India is going to have good relationship with China soon. Basically, that is what happened. So in that way, we have to have maintained a good relationship with all the countries and the countries of different groups. Basically, that is what India. A lot of countries, a lot of experts of foreign policy are used to say like India is here, India is there, India is everywhere. What kind of India policy India is adopting, India is practicing? Basically, that is smart diplomacy. Don't let the any country know what India's basically next move will be, basically where India will be. So this is the smart diplomacy. We have to go by that, and that is what India government is already doing. We're trying to maintain balance, and that is what calls the multi-alignment in this present world order. That this is what happening. So with this, but the role of Quad definitely is very important. There's no doubt, and we are trying to have good relations with all these four. No, these. If I'm talking about from Indian perspective, all these three members like Australia, Japan, and USA, definitely that these three countries are important for India's growth or the rise as a regional power, and not only regional, global leader in global South. Basically, that is what been said by uh, experts. So with this, I'm thanking you, Sania, for making very nice and presentation. Definitely, we'll have more questions, interaction in the last. This is what I'm expecting. With this, I'm going to invite the next presentation.
Thank you so much, sir.
Yeah. Dr. Ghulam Ali, Deputy Director of Hong Kong Research Center for Asian Studies. Dr. Ghulam Ali.
Thank you very much, Jay. It's a great honor and great opportunity to interact with a lot of very senior Indian scholars. I like to share my slide. It should be through, I guess, yes.
Yes, visual.
Well, it's not very long. I'll try to. I have less knowledge, so I'll try to finish quickly. Most of the scholars have covered very important areas of Indo-Pacific and external play. I will see the role of Saudi Arabia. So when we see Asia Pacific as a region and we see the role of external powers, we normally go for United States. Then we see China, although it's within the region, but China's role is considered after the US as the most important influencing Asia Pacific region. Then we also see European Union, individual country as well as a regional bloc affecting this region, also because of its economic power as well as its colonial legacy. One aspect which is not discussed really, but I consider it's an important and emerging external player influencing and interacting with the sub-region and countries of Asia Pacific, and that is Saudi Arabia. So I will mostly cover on Saudi Arabia's recent engagement with the Asia Pacific countries. I covered 4 sub-regions in Oceania, East Asia, Southeast Asia, and South Asia. I started this work from around 2015 when there was a change of leadership in Saudi Arabia, in which we see the Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman and his father assumed the charge and became president, king and Crown Prince. I normally study this from a regional approach. There might be some suitable IR theories which explaining why Saudi Arabia is very engaged with the Asia Pacific countries, but I took it from a regional approach. I found that from 2015 till now, and keeping in view the trend, Saudi Arabia has an unprecedented diplomatic engagement with the most important countries of Asia Pacific. I try to find out the reasons, what drives Saudi diplomacy towards these regions. It's more empirical study. if we go back to the history of modern Saudi Arabia, we see its policy revolve around two factors: oil for security. It supplied oil to the West, especially US, and in return, these Western power provided security to the Saudi regimes. And geopolitically, maximum Saudi Arabia was confined with its rivalry with Iran. This was two dominant factor which were seen in Saudi diplomacy for the decades. But recently, I quoted from a senior Thai journalist who says that it's quoted in 2023 that within Asia Pacific, there are more news about Saudi Arabia's engagement with these countries, including with Thailand and India, China. So we see Saudi Arabia is deeply engaged in diplomatic ties with all countries, as mighty as China and India, and as small as Oceania's tiny nations whose population is hardly a few thousands. We also see that Saudi Arabia from 2015 onward is engaged in repairing its ties with the Asia Pacific countries. For instance, Saudi and Thailand relationship was cut off from around 80s. There was no diplomatic ties for more than 3 decades over a Saudi consulate and Saudi staff's murder in Bangkok. So Saudi Arabia restored these relationship 2 years ago. We also see that Saudi Arabia's relationship with Australia and New Zealand were not very strong mainly due to the human rights issues. But we see Saudi Arabia took an active role to stabilize these relationships. And now we see that Thai and Saudi relationship are improving in dimensions, similarly with Australia and New Zealand. We also see that Saudi Arabia's new engagements with the mighty China and India. Saudi Arabia historically has more closer ties with Pakistan and sided with Pakistan on some of the issues which were concern to India. Similarly, Saudi Arabia's connection with China was quite limited through 20th century. But now we see that Saudi Arabia is engaging both these countries actively, and Saudi-India relationship has significantly improved in different areas. We also see that Saudi Arabia is moving from the nearest country to geographically as well as the farthest in the Indo-Pacific. So this is very different approach in Saudi diplomacy recently. Similarly, as I mentioned before, that in Saudi diplomacy, it's not caring about the size of the countries. It's also going to very tiny, small states. It's in Oceania, and it has invited all those small states in Riyadh 2 years ago. Another important aspect in Saudi assertive diplomacy or active diplomacy recently that it is developing relationship irrespective of other countries' culture, political systems, level of development, etc. The traditional concept that Saudi Arabia is the center of Islam as the 3 important religions emerged from that, and it has an approach more toward the Islamic countries, is not seen in this assertive diplomacy in the last 1 decade. It's approaching the countries with very different religions like India or Philippines or Vietnam. Even you see that Saudi Arabia is trying to engage all those countries irrespective of their colors or their systems. I also found that Saudi Arabia's leadership found a new practice of diplomacy by facilitating the new leadership in these countries. As someone win elections, it will send greetings to them. It sent greetings to these countries on their national days or on their independence days. So it's a bit unconventional for Saudi Arabia. We see what was Saudi Arabia in the 70s, 80s, or 90s. So this is just one example of Saudi Arabia's active diplomacy in the last 1 decade. in and a very important shift is seen in Saudi Arabia's diplomacy is that it's not only depending on the sale of oil, that it supply oils and earn money, but in its engagement, it's try to have two-side investments. It's also pushing the countries to gain their technology. For instance, if it's supplying oil to China, Japan, Korea, it's also asking them that these countries should bring their specialty and technology and invest within the Saudi Arabia or transfer some sort of technology to them. So it's a new shift in Saudi diplomacy that it's moving beyond oil supplies as it was used to be in previous decades. What are the driver behind these activities? Why Saudi Arabia became assertive or active in its diplomacy? I found first is a domestic pressure. Saudi society in the age of AI, in the age of information technology, in the age of social media, is changing very fast. It has one of the youngest population ratio in the world. So it's very difficult to manage a country and with young population with traditional method, with the stereotype approaches. So the pressure is from within the country that it must reform. Second, we see young leadership. Most of these changes are being driven by Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman. His perception has been developed in West in different way, maybe because of the as the chair mentioned, the deep state, but he's very unconventional. He's very untraditional. He's taking a very bold step and transforming society, conservative, traditional, stereotype, religious centered society is very difficult, but he's taking step for them. So another reason is that the young leadership in the country. Third is economic reasons. United States produces more oil than the Saudi Arabia. And so US has no more dependence on Saudi Arabia for oil. So definitely Saudi Arabia need a market, and Asia Pacific together buy more oil than US or the Europe from Saudi Arabia. So naturally, it's an economic factor which led Saudi Arabia to engage with the Asia Pacific region. And furthermore, I think the Asia Pacific countries are also receptiveness. They showed receptiveness to Saudi Arabia. When the new leadership assumed power in 2015, they confronted with a lot of human rights issues like the war in Yemen, later on Washington Post journalist murder, and Saudi Arabia's domestic politics. So when the new leadership emerged, it tried to expand relationship with its traditional partner like Europe or US. It received a very negative response. Those countries were very critical to Saudi Arabia's initiatives. So the Mohammed bin Salman went on the back step, and it's and then we see instead Saudi Arabia approach all these countries like Asia Pacific, South Asian countries, Southeast Asian countries. Most of these Asia Pacific countries, except New Zealand and Australia, they were not concerned about Saudi Arabia's domestic issues or its own politics. So this delinking Saudi Arabia's diplomacy also help Saudi Arabia to engage them in a more active way. So most Asia Pacific countries were not concerning about Saudi Arabia's domestic affair. So as Saudi Arabia approached them, they showed the same warmness, and that's why the relationship began to improve. Then we see that G20 was one of the major global forum on which Saudi Arabia gained a considerable experience of a diplomacy, a country which remained introvert for a long time. it also had its presidency. So Saudi leadership gained this experience, interacted with global leadership. G20 has many Asia Pacific countries as well. So this was an additional platform. Saudi Arabia used different platform like OIC, like Arab League, like GCC, but they are more traditional platform. G20 was more a global Western platform, which Western as well as Eastern platform, and this experience was also behind its activism. Second, finally, we also see a shift in global system. The strong grip of the West, especially the US, excuse me, it made a very strong grip on Saudi and GCC countries for a long time. Even whenever they try to have a more independent foreign policy, they were not allowed. So as there is a global shift in this in the structure of the global system, Saudi Arabia, like many other countries, China, like India, like Indonesia, they got more space to manipulate and maneuver in this one. So global shift, power shift was also behind Saudi Arabia's activeness in the Indo-Pacific. The final slide, what's its implication and how see it? I feel that Saudi's engagement with Asia Pacific as well as the rest of the world will further expand. This trend is not temporary, driven by some particular event or some other reason. It's an enduring trend which is likely to continue. We will see more Saudi's engagement. Relating to this, that Saudi Arabia's system is it's a monarchy. It's don't have to go through the election or the change. I mean, like we see even in India or we see in US, that very different setups which can change the policies of previous government. So it's a monarchy. That means that the current leadership, which is pushing for the reform, it will remain in normal condition in power for a long period of time. So we see the continuity of the reforms in Saudi foreign policy. I also see Saudi Arabia is emerging as one of the centers, at least in the region, as a geopolitical and economic player and center of geopolitics in the region in near future. I also see that the new phase of mid-Asia is emerging, like it's Middle East and Asia's confluence at multiple level, not only with Saudi Arabia, but also with other countries. This will also be a trend, at least in the region, or at least one of the trends in Asia Pacific region. I also found that Saudi Arabia is fastest transforming country domestically, in economic terms, in political, in geopolitical terms as well. Therefore, I will end to the same saying of a Thai journalist that we will see in Asia Pacific, we will see more news about Saudi Arabia interacting with the world. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Ghulam Ali. Thank you for making very nice presentation. Another important presentation you have made in this very important session. Why I'm telling so? Because I have being a student of IR, this is what I have observed. Like Saudi Arabia have been a country which have never, shown its interest to becoming part of any particular group. Basically, it has always been maintaining balance among different groups, and that's why it is celebrating or enjoying basically having good relations with all blocks: China, USA, India, and the other part of the world like. Australia, New Zealand too. You have mentioned Australia, New Zealand. They don't care what kind of domestic issues are taking place there in Saudi Arabia. Of course, that is true. But at the same time, Saudi Arabia is having good relations with those countries which have no concerns, direct or indirect concerns in domestic politics of Saudi Arabia. Even though Saudi Arabia is trying to maintain relations with those countries too. So this, like the case of India, India is having very close relationship with Saudi Arabia in particular time framework. So with this, and there's another important what stories are happening in West Asia and what is happening in present time in Middle East. We all are observing, but Saudi Arabia is maintaining somehow very neutral position. It is not taking position of particular group, while Iran is all the time requesting or basically asking Saudi Arabia's help, but they're denying. They're not going with basically argument of Iran or basically Israel. They're trying to maintain neutrality in basically ongoing war. So these kind of incidents are taking place because of they are very much keen to have no developmental process. As initially you have mentioned, as you have nicely, just one second. Yeah, you have rightly mentioned one important point, like what I was talking about here. The war. I was talking about Middle East war. What is happening between this Israel and Palestine, and Iran versus Israel. These kind of incidents are taking place over there. But still, Saudi Arabia is trying to keep itself away from these kind of conflict, confrontations, wars. Basically, that is what leading them to become basically a very important player in that particular region in terms of development, in terms of becoming economically powerful country. And initially, yeah, that was the point I wanted to mention here, like oil for security, right? That was the point you have oil for security, at the same time oil for development. That was the transformation there that is taking place. Yeah, security is important point, really that is important, but at the same time they are focusing too much on developmental process, and that is what they have achieved. They have proved this oil we are utilizing for basically our developmental things, like infrastructural development. They are having one of the best cities in the world at present. Basically, infrastructure and electricity they are providing to their people. A health system they are having very strong. In terms of educational system, they are coming with so called the biggest of the universities over there in Saudi Arabia. So these kind of things are taking place, and that is happening because of they are very much clear in their vision, what they are trying to achieve and where they are to move into. Basically, with this, I would like to thank you, Dr. Ghulam Ali, for making a very nice presentation, and definitely I would like to invite the next presenter of the session, Dr. Vijay Jayshwal. Vijay ji, I made you wait for a while, but I was sure you'll be able to join. Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, you're very much audible.
Thank you so much for giving me this opportunity to share my research work. And I'm not into international relations from any perspectives, but I did my PhD from China, so I've closely observed how these narratives are built in relating to Indo-Pacific in people's perceptions. So being a last speaker is a good thing. You don't have to speak much, but I will try to redress the perspectives of considering the perceptions of members on the Indo-Pacific regions. So I will try to deal with the two particular perspectives. One, if we see these national perceptions relating to the constructs of the Indo-Pacific are not similar in every member state. And this may be the one reasons that you have seen the different variations among the peoples to understand the benefits possibly associated with this entire construct in the international politics. There are three things that you need to consider while talking about the perceptions of the members. The first thing is that these all countries who are on these regions have their own operational realities, they have priorities, and they have also perceptions built on those particular national interests. So as some of the speakers were saying, with Chinese governments, which each nations are trying to have a good relations in the one way, and they're also trying to admit the fact that China's economic, political, and the military expansions could be a threat to these regions. So in that way, these possibilities of convergence and divergence in perceptions need to be clearly identified if we really want to get the benefits out of it. So there are three perceptions based on the material facts that have been identified through conducting a proper research on it. The first thing, we need to have a cooperate, collaborate, and the coordinate. And these are largely based on the managerial attributes of the member states. And these are largely also based on how these perceptions have been created by the practitioners and also by the different resource institutions. So perceptions basically have contributions to develop narratives in terms of looking for the benefits and also in terms of avoiding the ambiguity that we are building surrounding the larger constructs of Indo-Pacific in last few years. And I do agree, every state, they have their own concerns and they try to get the benefits and making a proper balance with this rising economy in the north side. And other few considerations that we need to look into it is about whether there's a strategic perceptions of the others who are directly, indirectly associated with these all constructs have been literally taken into considerations while building these narratives on Indo-Pacific or not. So, for example, if you see, in last 20 years, strategically we have seen the presence of the different authorities in contested regions need to be well perceived. Otherwise, we have to have a bilateral relations along with we can build these possible multilateral avenues for having perspectives of it. So there's very need to have a operational realities along with the priorities and the perceptions based on the members who are in the Indo-Pacific regions. And I do consider at least my associations with this research could have also implications on the international law. Indo-Pacific is not a political construct only; it will have also impacts on the international law. So far we have seen and coming from a measure with the international law, we need to consider establish values in terms of considering any those regional initiatives in eyes of the international law. We need to see the charter that they're used by under the UN along with some other regional associations, and in that way we can see the entire political and economic system under the Indo-Pacific regions to have a very strong foundational thing that we can look for more sustainable illnesses. So this is all I thought to share with you. I don't want to take much more time being a last speakers. Over to you, professors. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. That is very much important point. This is what I have already spoke about actually. This is what we have to be careful while we are having no relations with any countries or basically bilaterally or multilaterally. This is what happening. A lot of people are there who are used to say like India should have good relations with Quad members, but that is one side of story. We have to think differently. We should have good relations with China too, because China is there everywhere too. Basically, its presence is rising. That is reality. We have to accept that reality too. If we are aspiring to become a global player, basically, in that way, we should have good, we should maintain balance between, China and USA. We should have good relations with both of the parts. We can't say like we are going to have good relations with USA, but not with China, because we are having differences with basically China. And differences are there with USA too. Still we are having good relationship with Asia. So definitely there are a lot of issues we have to think differently by engaging all the countries, all the member states which are willing to have good relations with India. If India is aspiring to become basically global leader, in that way, China is also trying to minimize its differences with other countries, other part of the world. Like, it is trying to minimize differences from Japan, Mongolia, Vietnam, India. All these countries are there. Which China is trying to engage basically. This is what happening, and in that way basically India also trying to have relations with, trying to maintain balance in having relationship with basically different actors in different regions basically. So that is very good idea, deconstructing the people's narrative on basically major issues. This and another point we have raised, like major issues. There are numerous issues are there basically. You can't say like that is very much limited with particular set of issues. Now, n number of issues are involved within that. So we're not going to discuss because due to shortage of time. So now I'm going to invite all the participants who are participating in this particular session to ask questions, queries, or doubts, and that is what makes a session healthy. Please raise your questions, queries to basically speakers. Anyone of you have any question to any speaker, please raise your question to that particular speaker. You all are invited. Yeah. Is there a question, query? Yeah, I know you all are, about to have dinner. Yeah, Dr. Ghulam Ali, please.
I think, Chair, you have already answered this to a certain extent. I wonder how you view the recent disengagement between China and India, and where, keeping in view the history and keeping in view the recent experience of 4.5 years of confrontation in which both sides learned, where you see this relationship going in next near to midterm future?
Yeah, this is a very important point. This is what happening. And this is what actually we are observing here, being an Indian citizen actually. We have no been differences with China since very long. 1960 onwards, 62 onwards, basically, we have no differences with China. But you have to understand what kind of factors involved in basically while we are going, against basically passing argument or basically doing or adopting any policy against China, basically. There are several factors. And there's another important point I would like to clear before I explain the major issues. The major For many years we have celebrated very close relationship with China, and China have been very, the largest basically trade partner of India for many years, and that is what made West basically uncomfort. They were not happy with this kind, relationship or relations with China from Indian side to basically. That is what happened at the time. But that is changing very fast. That is what both of the government have realized. If we are going to have to maintain this kind of rift, in between, and that is going to help basically West. So it's better to have close relationship. We have to have minimize our differences, whether that is border related issues or any other issues. And that is what happening. That is what becoming reality. No, government is engaged in doing a lot of things. As you have mentioned, 4.5 years. That is what happened. India and China have, been involved in basically, at border, basically, and their forces will indulge into basic confrontation at border. That is what happened in past. But that is one side of the story. Now government is trying to have very close, and both of the governments, I'm mentioning this important factor, both of governments are willing to go ahead with that plan. We should minimize our differences so that we could enjoy that close relationship, and that is what we enjoyed in past too. So, and that is what making basically West uncomfort. This is what the reality we have to accept. And US is not so much happy if US is listening that from India side, India is going to have minimize. India is going to minimize its differences from Chinese side. This is not something they like. They are used to hear from Indian side, but India government is doing, and that is what good for Indian national security as well as for economic security. Yeah. So that's why government of India is trying to basically work closely with Chinese government, and this is what vice versa. It's not one-sided basically. Chinese government is also trying to have basically very, very close. They're also aspiring to become basically global player, global leader, as India is aspiring. We both parties or both governments are aspiring to become global leader. Definitely they should work closely. There's nothing like one will be number one, other will be number two. It's not like that. Both can be number one. This is what the story is basically. Both can be benefited by having good relationship with basically with each other, and that is what the observation, and this is what basically the reality is. We have to accept in 21st century. If we are going to be indulged into basically conflict and confrontation, definitely that will help West, and that is what the US government wants to basically. This is what they are aspiring for. These two countries go into basically conflict so that they could get benefited, and these kind of realities are there. We need to be very much pragmatic and realist while we're having any kind of differences or relationship with any countries in the world. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, is there any queries to participants and chair too? You all are invited. No?
Yeah, we are sending some questions in chat.
Okay. I'm
Yeah,
going
that
to
we
read.
have received in social medias like Facebook and YouTube.
Yeah, please share those questions to basically this group chat box.
There are two questions for General Singh and one for Kashif.
Yeah. Okay, just 1 second.
I read for you, or you can.
I'm just reading the questions. Question on Facebook for Lieutenant General Singh. How do land-based military installations and border security influence the Indo-Pacific's maritime security environment? Sir, do I need to read again? How do land-based military installations and border security influence the Indo-Pacific's maritime security environment? That question goes to Lieutenant General Singh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Of course, I see both the questions here.
Yeah, please.
The first question, I do not know what correlation the questioner is trying to bring between the land-based military installations and border security to influence the Indo-Pacific maritime security environment. As I said earlier in my talk, that countries which carry a subcontinental context, like India, they tend to carry a 360-degree security orientation. In a sense that land borders are important to them, and therefore securing those borders becomes a paramount territorial integrity problem for the country. Second, that in a country like India, where we have festering militancies and areas, parts of country which are under extremism, so therefore dealing with that is also a security priority. And beyond that, looking beyond the peninsular or the coastal construct that we have, that there are issues of maritime security which are largely non-traditional or largely traditional and non-military. In a sense, whether we're talking about the duties of the Coast Guard, illicit fishing, deep sea mining, ICNO offenses at sea, or pollution dumping at sea, things of that kind. So my point is that when we talk about land-based military installations, they are spread over the length and breadth of the country. The ones which are there in the hinterland and along the borders perform a certain role, and there is a purpose to it. Now, when we talk about installations that are along the coastline, military installations that are along the coastline, which are largely naval, have a role to play. Whether it is the protection of the port infrastructure or oil and refinery infrastructure, or about the larger movement of the airways and the seaways, is that to be secured, are of a different kind. So my point is that the land borders deployment or the infrastructure there is different from the one that is along the coastlines. Each one of them has a different purpose. So the one which is on the land borders obviously does not have any connect with the maritime security dimension. But the one which is along the coastal extent, obviously there are duties which fall whether in the larger domain category of police functions, constabulary functions. There are functions which are about securing, say, the sea lanes, or probably at a point of time securing the choke points, which I don't know whether really some areas that we refer to as the choke points can really be choked at that point of time. Or is it about securing the critical infrastructure that runs through the sea, whether that is communication infrastructure? Okay. So all that put together. So what I'm trying to say is that it is very difficult to kind of build a connect between defense installations on land with those of at sea. Yes, when you talk about the islands and the island territories, they have to be organized in such a manner, as what I explained in my talk, that the maritime approaches to island territories is extremely important. The coastal length along the island territories is equally important. And then at a third level, you can say that the hinterland of the islands is also important. So I think I'll just leave it at that. The next question, I think is just the same. How can Indo-Pacific nations address the challenges of territorial disputes? See, territorial disputes are are between countries, or you have a territorial disputes are between country A and B, or between A and C and A and D. So therefore, territorial disputes have to be resolved bilaterally, have to be resolved mutually. So as a landlubber, well, I personally don't see the role of an Indo-Pacific framework to resolve problems at land which are border related. And let me explain that further, that if there is an issue of land borders, or there is a lack of border settlement between countries A and B, which has to be done on a certain set of principles, those set of principles of resolving the border have to be constituted, have to be worked out between these two countries. And therefore, the entire process of settling a border rests between the two countries, and therefore I see rather no role of any other country in terms of resolving border disputes. Okay. I think these are the two questions I had, sir.
Yeah, that is what the questions are, right?
Thank you.
Yeah. And the next question is to Dr. Asif, I think. Dr. Kashif, yeah. How does the Indo-Pacific Economic Framework provide opportunities for India to strengthen its semiconductor industry? Kashif.
So regarding the question, we can see it from a different perspective. So there are 4 pillars in IPF. Regarding the for trade pillars, India has kept its status as observer. So other 3 aspects we can see from semiconductor perspective, we can see that for India, their national interest or strategic or tech interests are a priority. So India is a part of a BRICS, also it's a part of Quad. It's the way the other presenters have mentioned. So India's semiconductor policy has started in 2021 and IPA was established in 2022. So it's in the last 3 years, what we can see is how these cooperation MOU agreements that India has signed with like Japan or South Korea, Netherlands, US. You can see the IPF has 14 members. So most of the members which also has tech cooperation with India. So if you see semiconductor from a economic perspective, it will gain economic benefit. But if you see from a tech cooperation, how these countries India has signed MOU will help India. As also mentioned that for the next 2-3 years, India will have it status of tech personnel to have an advantage. But that issue will be only solved how Indian government is taking the question they mentioned and how they're going to address it. So IPF is a different thing, but how Indian government is taking on the domestic front and how they collaborate or align with the IPF interest or mission, then only semiconductor industry in India will be grown. Like there are issues like Apple. So recently there was a fire in India's industry, Apple industry in Tamil Nadu, which has impacted supply. So Apple has gone back to China once again. So issue at India at domestic level and how India is collaborating with other countries and how other countries and the multinational companies are cooperating and responding to any issue, which have to be keep in mind. So that's my take, sir. So
Okay,
it will be helpful.
Yeah, thank you. And the next question is Dr. Ali. How does Saudi Arabia's engagement with China's Belt and Road Initiative affect its influence in the Asia Pacific region? Dr. Ali.
I think the relationship between both sides are deepening. They have basically converged Saudi Vision 2030 with China's BRI in many fields, and they have been cooperating in case to case. But there's not any significant joint venture in the broader Asia Pacific. I think China-Saudi Arabia relationship is more bilateral nature rather than making something in a group or regional level. So bilaterally, yes, they have a huge cooperation in many fields. They bring all this under these 2 broader national programs of the 2 countries. In investment in technology and AI in infrastructure, less defense and security. In all other fields, China is cooperating with Saudi Arabia.
Yeah, the next question is to Dr. Vijay. What role does media play in deconstructing narratives in the Indo-Pacific? Yeah. Dr. Vijay, Jayshwal. I don't think Vijay is there. I think Dr. Vijay, are you there? Okay. So
I think he has got disconnected.
yeah, what role does media play? That is what the question actually for Vijay. If somebody want to respond that question, will be great. Is there someone expert of China?
There is one question for Sania, I guess.
There's another question for Dr. Sania. How can the Quad enhance its inclusivity and collaboration with smaller Indo-Pacific nations? And there's another, what role does India's maritime strategy play in its broader geopolitical objectives in the region? Dr. Sania.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much. It's a very good question. First of all, I want to say, yes, sir. Quad actually, if I see, I have already mentioned that it was made against China, but India can be a best balancer in that. And as India uses its inclusive approach and collaborative approach, so India can be a balancer whereby India can, make you can say balance a relationship between US, China, Australia, Japan, all these nations, and also it can enhance these, because for them India is very significant player in the Indo-Pacific, so it can enhance you can say these major powers to have relationships with the smaller countries and be the partners, so that their significance can also become through its regional alignments, through its multi alignments. It can enhance Quad members also to have engagements with smaller nations also. And does India's maritime strategy play?
I think there's some network issue with Dr. Sania. Yeah.
I think there was some network issue. So it is increasing its partnership with these nations, so to build its maritime security, and it needs to improve further in that, and to increase its more maritime, and also to balance its geopolitical challenges. And it has because the trade, economic trade, the balance of the power, all these are the basic geopolitical challenges which India faces, and it needs to cover that. Thank you so much, sir. Hope I am able to answer the questions.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. So I think we should move forward. And all the papers you all have presented was really very nice, and really I have enjoyed listening to all of you. And this is very important, session. Why the theme was designed really, great emerging challenges in the Indo-Pacific region. A lot of challenges we are experiencing in this present era, in present scenario, basically, and those challenges are very much interlinked, connected. The story revolves around basically China US rivalry. That is what the story is basically. Why these two countries are involved into basically rivalry. That is what also we need to understand. That is what about trade basically. Economic factor leads basically this particular rivalry between China and USA. That is what. And both of the countries are one of the country is trying to maintain its basically dominance across the globe, and the other country is aspiring to become basically a global leader, basically global dominant actor in this present world. And that is the entire key factor of having differences and blockings and groupings, subgroupings, and numerous issues are there. At the same time, what happening? What's real challenges we are facing because of the differences of these two countries, or rivalry because of the rivalry of these two countries. And that is the real challenges we are facing in terms of multilateral institutions and organizations. All the multilateral organizations are failed in basically getting, their clauses or their policies, their laws implemented in that particular, in this particular region. And China is not basically very much keen to follow all the instructions given by International Court of Justice in South China Sea. This is what we have observed in past, how the court has given direction against China, but China has denied that. So, and that the same story happened in the case of USA too. The present government, the expected government, I would say, like led by this Donald Trump, what kind of expectation we're going to have is so clear. In last term, what he has done, he has rejected the very much emergence of several multilateral platforms, institutions, including WHO too. So that is the real problem. That's why countries are so much dependent on basically multilateral platforms nowadays. That's why they're going for um, other alternatives which should provide them basically security in sense of economic security, national security, other aspect, human security too. So that's why countries are trying to have smaller blockings, groupings, and regional group, basically associations and institutions. And at the same time, they are trying to have good bilateral relations with other actors who are based in this particular Indo-Pacific region. So that is the issue. And the issue, if I would mention here, like that is not very much focused on traditional differences too. There are non-traditional issues which are also emerging in this particular region, which are going to threaten basically all the countries across the globe. That is what we have experienced in the case of basically COVID-19. How what kind of challenges we have faced during that particular time basically. There were several countries who blame basically China for this entire chaos of COVID-19, but we don't have evidence. Even Chinese government has never provided any, they never allowed basically the WHO team to investigate the real cause of the outbreak of COVID-19. These kind of challenges. That's why US-led group is very much attacking on basically China's role in basically COVID-19 crisis. So these kind of issues are there which involves within it, and regional organizations also playing very important role. Few of you have already mentioned BRI, CSO, CSTO, AIB, INSTCS, and the initiatives taken by OBOR, like by China, OBOR, CPEC, and BRI, which is also known as BRI, and multilateral, multi-alignments. India is deeply involved in basically India is also aspiring to become a basically regional player and global player in that way. And India is also having good relationship with other players which are so much active in this particular region. Like India is having good close relationship with Japan and Saudi Arabia, as someone has already mentioned. Central Asia, connect Central Asia. These kind of policies government of India is taking have started basically to lead or to confront basically the policies of US, China and USA basically in this particular Indo-Pacific region. These kind of things are taking. And there's another important point someone has mentioned, Sagar Mala initiative of government of India, through which government is trying to have good relations with all the neighboring countries, including basically smaller island countries basically. So all the state actors are basically deeply involved in retaining their position in this particular region, so that they could maintain or enhance, advance their national interests, and that is what happening in this particular region. But at the same time, these challenges are rising. And definitely we are coming with solutions too. What kind of solutions there should be basically, and the solutions from different sides are different. Now Chinese are looking at different solutions, and Americans are looking different solutions. But at the same time, where India is, that is the question is in this particular region, because India is trying to maintain balance between China and USA. That is a beautiful case to study basically. India is nowhere. India is saying, yeah, we are all those countries, all those groups which are going to help India in basically becoming a developed country, basically in rising country, basically established country in this particular Indo-Pacific region. So this is very unique topic, and this is all the papers all of you have presented are very nice, very unique, and I enjoyed a lot with this. I'm going to congratulate Dr. Pramod Jayshwal for making this conference a successful and nicely organized conference. I wish you all the best for other programs, similar programs in the future we are planning to conduct basically. Thank you so much, nice team, and Pramod Jayshwal and all the presenters too. Thank you so much.